G'day guys, welcome back to another tipping video on the channel. I'll be going through my round 8 predictions and also going through what occurred in round 7. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Starting off with the first game between St Kilda versus Port. Yeah, unfortunately did go for the Saints in this one. Bit of a 50-50 in a way, and Port, they've got a pretty good run at Marvel and they managed to get the job done. So yeah, incorrect. Not a great way to start the round. But then I was more happy with this. Decisions on the Saturday. Happy with Brisbane. They convincingly beat Freo. Tipped that. I was going to tip GWS, but I knew they'd win. And yeah, it hurts. That's for sure. But yeah, unfortunately got that one wrong too. Tipped the Dogs. Frustratingly by 28, they won by 29, so close there. Also happy, obviously, with the Melbourne and Carlton games being smashings, seeming I tipped them as well. Moving on to the Sunday, again, pretty happy. Tipped Geelong, unfortunately didn't tip Gold Coast. I don't know what's happened to Richmond at the moment, and correct with the Pies winning also by 1 point. And I'm going to keep the tradition of last year. When I get a correct tip by the right margin, I get a bonus point. So, yeah, I'm happy about that. And now I'll go through my big calls. Not a very good week for these ones. My big call for the first game was the Saints are in front for the entire match. That was a fail because obviously Port won. Brisbane to kick 5 more behinds than goals. That didn't occur. GWS to kick the first 3 goals of the game. They kicked the first 2. Close there. Font and Shalor to combine for 70 more touches and 4 more goals. They both didn't combine for any. And they both had pretty bad games in terms of disposals. 10 or less goals are combined in the second half in Melbourne versus North Melbourne. And that didn't occur. Curnow and Allen, combined for 6 or more goals, was easily correct. Curnow kicked 9. Allen kicked 1 in that clash. Essendon versus the Cats. I tipped the Cats to come from behind at 3/4 time and win. And they were winning for the whole game. So, yeah, wrong. Again, my big call was Daniel Rioli to have 35 or more disposals and 10 or more marks for the Tigers. But I knew he didn't get the marks, so there's no real point in me checking. And in the Pies versus Crows legendary game, I tipped McCreary to kick 3 more goals. He didn't kick any. So, yeah, I'm happy with the bonus point, but I guess that's kind of good, seeming I only got 1 big call correct, being pretty basic in the end, pretty generic with Curnow and Allen, because Charlie Curnow was fantastic in that game. And I managed to get the 6 tips, which is pretty good. Not amazing though. But yeah, let's move on to round 8. My predictions for round 8, I feel like they're pretty good, but I'm not 100% sure how they're going to go. Anyway, first game is Carlton taking on Brisbane. At Marvel Stadium. Both teams, pretty great form. Brisbane were fantastic against Freo. Their teams really get going now, and yeah, their defence has been surprisingly very good. Because in recent years, Brisbane haven't had brilliant defences, but their defence is really stepping up with guys like Jack Payne. Obviously, you got the obvious ones in Kadeem Coleman and Harris Andrews. Daniel Rich and Zorko are big outs though, so yeah, that's pretty bad for them. And for the Blues, well, Charlie Curnow kicked 9. Their midfield was dominant. Akers, Walsh, Chera, Hewitt, Cripps, Kennedy came on as sub. Got like 10 touches in that final quarter. It was fantastic. They were all fantastic. In defence, they somehow managed to rank up a heap of it, even though the ball did not go in there at all. Newman, Sard, Kemp, even, just throwing random names at you now. Doherty, Chincotta, just ridiculous numbers they had against West Coast. And I think Brisbane might be able to get over their Marvel hoodoo and beat the Blues here. by 16 points. But my big call, Curnow, to kick 5 or more goals to continue his red hot form. Then a very, very, very interesting game to start off the Saturday. Richmond versus West Coast. Now, both teams are coming in with horrible form, both sitting 16th and 18th respectively. We start with the Eagles. Just piss poor, really, from West Coast. Their coach, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets sacked after this game or even after the next. I did call that he would be sacked after this game against Richmond at the start of the season. So, yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. Also, they've only got 26 AFL players that can currently line up, which is how much you need, really, to make a team, really. And yeah, if one of them goes down, then they will have to call up some top-up player. So things are just getting worse and worse with the Eagles and their injuries. And, well, Richmond, they were horrible against Gold Coast. They were pretty inaccurate. They just couldn't get the football for the majority of the game. Gold Coast just kick mark. They just couldn't get the football back in the last quarter when they had the momentum. And, yeah, in the end, they lost the game. But I think surely they can't lose to West Coast, right? Richmond by 18 points. My big call, Tigers to kick a run of 5 or more goals in a row. Then we've got Geelong versus Adelaide. Geelong were fantastic last week. Tom Hawkins kicking a career high 8 goals. Surprised that is his career high because he's had a fantastic season. And finally got over kicking 7 goals and kicked the 8. He was very, very solid. The Cats weren't brilliant in the second half, but they just had to do really what they had to do. And Dangerfield was massive as well. He was very, very important in the win. And Adelaide, well, heartbreakingly lost to Collingwood by a point. They were very, very inaccurate. And, well, in a way, Adelaide lost to Adelaide in the end. And Adelaide beat themselves. Like their midfield was way better than ours. Duday and Murray were intercepting everything at the start of the game. Their forwards were getting good looks early. Players like Rochelle, Rankin, Tex, Fogarty, Pedlar, you name it, anyone really. They just couldn't convert. There was a really bad one in the third quarter where Pedlar missed right in front of goal. And I think that just summed up Adelaide's game. They've got to come out and kick straight up because all their games they've lost this season have been because of bad goal kicking. But you got to go safe, and it is at Cardinia Park too. Geelong by 22 points. My big call, Cameron kicks 5 or more goals, continuing his good form. And then we got Gold Coast versus Melbourne. Pretty dead rubber game, this one. Up at the Metricon, Heritage Bank Stadium. I keep on forgetting about the name change. Melbourne have been pretty good recently, just cementing themselves as the real benchmark of the comp. They were fantastic last week. And Gold Coast, well, they're just doing kick mark in that game. Horrible ball use by both Richmond and Gold Coast in the first half. In the second half, Gold Coast just denied Richmond of the football. And that was really the reason why they won. They also had a pretty good second half of the third quarter where they kicked a few goals and basically ruined Richmond's season in a way. And, well, their season isn't doing much better, that's for sure. And Melbourne could definitely ruin them if they win by 50 plus. But I'm going to go safe and go 35 points. Not so much of a blowout as what people might think. My big call is a bit of an interesting one seeming. I'm not 100% sure if one of these players will play because, Melbourne have heaps of key forwards. Ben Brown might be back. Tom McDonald pushing for this guy, so he might be dropped. But Van Rooyen, hopefully he plays, and Chandler combined for 6 or more goals. And then we got arguably the game of the round here, and one of my favourite games, and one of the best rivalries going around at the moment in the competition. The Dogs taking on the Giants at Manuka. If you told me a few weeks ago that this game would be game of the round, I wouldn't believe you. Because the Dogs, a few weeks ago, they were sitting 1 and 2, not looking great. GWS a few weeks ago as well, they weren't looking great, losing to West Coast. West Coast are last at the moment, so yeah, that was a pretty bad loss for them. But they played brilliantly against Sydney. A few young kids really stepped up. Buckley on Buddy, I thought he was pretty good for the first half of the game at least. Iden's been very, very solid back there. Callaghan's had a great season so far, that is. Cadman again competed, so they've got a great list developing, and obviously you got them stars in Kelly, Toby Greene, Tom Greene, Jesse Hogan, Stephen Cornelio, Lockie Whitfield, all playing great footy at the moment as well. And the Dogs, they've just been pretty normal really. Pretty average win against Hawthorn. They weren't amazing. They weren't even great. They were just good. They were just the better team really. The first half though, probably thought Hawthorn were a bit better, especially in that first quarter. But the Dogs just ran over the top of them in the second half. And with a young team like Hawthorn, you're going to run out of legs pretty quickly. But I'm going to go the upset here. GWS by 8 points to continue their good start to the season. And my big call, the skipper Toby Greene kicks 4 or more goals. Next we got another game that I think could be a thriller, and not in a good way. Fremantle taking on the Hawks at Optus. If the only reason why I tune into this game, or see someone tuning into this game, is if they're a Hawk fan or a Freo fan, because both teams have had horrible starts to the season. Hawthorn were alright, but they just run out of legs, like they have all season. Sam Mitchell's just desperate for someone to step up in the second half and get their team over the line, and at the moment they just can't find that X-factor player to do it. Brewster's aging, Jaff's too young, Warple's been iffy in second halves this season. They just really need to find that player. Their first half player, who was outstanding, was Mitch Lewis, and he does make a difference to that team, and he was good in the return. And Freo, I didn't really see much of the game. I saw all the goals and everything, but Freo, they looked alright in the first quarter really, but just kept on turning it over, and they tried to get their ball movement going a bit quicker. Everyone calling them freeze mantle and all. They looked like they could potentially get something going in the first quarter, but just couldn't, and then by then they just gave up. And look, I'm not brave enough to tip Hawthorn, so I'm going to go Freo by 11 points in a thriller, a low-scoring thriller too. My big call, the lead never goes beyond 4 or more goals. I think it'll be close for the whole night. And then we got two amazing games on this Sunday. Port Adelaide taking on the Dons. Both teams started the season. Port were down and Essendon were up, and now the roles have reversed, and Port Adelaide are playing great footy, finals footy. And they're looking like maybe not a top 4 side, but they're definitely looking up there at the moment, and realistically probably should be playing finals the way they're going at the moment. They do have a few injuries. Marshall's back for them though, which is massive. Dersma did his PCL or MCL, can't quite remember, out for 8 weeks. Bit of a blow. He's amazing on that wing, just keeps running, just such a great player for them. Bit of a blow. But they've got all their players playing good footy. Boak had his best game of the season. Same with Wines. Butters was good. Rosie. Horn Francis was huge in the clearances as well. Their young ruck, Teakle, he's been pretty good for them, I think. At least in my opinion. Finlayson's playing well. Dixon. Burn-Jones has moved to the forward line. It's been interesting, but a good interesting, I guess. And then you got the players that have always been trying throughout their career, and Power Pepper and Burton. They're playing good footy. They've got a pretty good list. Essendon, they've had 2 challenging losses in a row. Positive, Wiedemann kicking 5 goals. Stringer, back to his best. Kick 4, had over 20 touches, looked good. Especially when he went into the middle, at the centre bounces. Merritt Parish getting it done still, but just couldn't get the job done. Expects a few changes. This is almost a must-win for them, because, they just don't want to drop too far down if they want to make the finals. But I'm going to go Port by 15 points. My big call, both teams combined for 50 or more scoring shots. And then we got the Pies taking on the Swans. Now, realistically, I know what everyone's saying. Oh, Sydney's got heaps of injuries. The Pies should win this game by 40 plus, maybe not 40 plus, but by a big way. And I can, for some reason, just see us maybe losing this one because, you know, Sydney have had the wood over us in recent years. I don't think we've beaten them since, 2018, maybe 2017 even. Yeah, it's been a while, that's for sure. It's also been a while since we played them at the G. Sydney have heaps of injuries, obviously, so it won't really tell us where they are at the moment. And they've just got to try and get through this period, get a few wins, and get some players back on their list, fit and healthy. They did regain Tom McCartan and Buddy Franklin, the positive from last weekend. Ryan Clark also played his first game for the season and looked pretty good. But yeah, they've just got a few players out of form. Isaac Heaney's not doing too well at the moment. Some of their defenders aren't playing very well, conceding quite a big score to the Giants last week. Their midfield's very, very inconsistent. Warner can have a good game one week and be absolutely rubbish the next. Same with Goulden, Mills, McInerney, who actually got dropped because of his horrible game against Geelong. So they've just got to fix this stuff up, Sydney. But the Pies, they escaped with a lucky win. Few interesting calls by the umpires. I'm not really going to go into that, but yeah, I think we were lucky to get the win. Then again, umpires and all. But yeah, we should win this game. I'm going to go 27 points. I'm going to go big, hopefully. My big call, Pies have 5 more behinds than goals. And then the final game, well, I'm not going to talk about this one for long because North, they had a nightmare game against Melbourne. The fact that it was shown on Channel 7 made it even more worse in a way. They got heaps of injuries. Zeeble got a little niggle. Hopefully he can get up. Powell went off late with an ankle. Obviously, we know what happened to Comben. Don't really want to talk about what happened to him, though. But yeah, hopefully he's okay. And there was another player who injured himself as well. I think it was concussed. One of the big men, Callum Coleman-Jones, I believe his name is. So, yeah, they just had a disastrous night against Melbourne. And, yeah, they just couldn't get anything out of the middle. Melbourne just went bang, bang, bang at the start of the game. And then it was all over within seconds. And then all their injuries added to a nightmare game for them. And, yeah, Clarko was just devastated for him. And I think everyone's devastated for North. Everyone just wants to see him playing good footy. But they didn't even try. They were alright in the last quarter, I guess. The Saints, well, one bad game. Don't worry about it. I know they lost to Port Adelaide in a thriller last season. Their season at the moment is very, 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 very similar to last season. Hopefully for their case, it doesn't occur the same this time because they started the season 8-2 last year, and then they finished the season 10-12 or something like that. So yeah, look, they've definitely got a few big weeks, but what better way to start those big weeks off with a big win here? And I reckon they'll win this game by 67 points. My big call, Saints kick 7 or more goals in any quarter. So yeah, they're the tips. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for next week. And also stay tuned for my review against Sydney.